Hello, everyone. Today I'm joined by my friend and fellow game developer, Thomas Brown, the lead developer behind a small game called Command Center Earth.
Hey guys, how's it going? Yeah, me, Thomas from Breakstep Studios. Happy to be here.
So we've met a couple months ago, and I've been playing the game on and off again, but recently I've been obsessively playing it, and we'll talk about that later. For now, can you describe what Command Center Earth is?
Yeah, sure. So, Command Center Earth is a punishingly difficult game where you guide a missile through a series of increasingly difficult asteroid fields. So, really, I made it to be a quick little pick up and play homage to the days of yonder when games were not so cozy and didn't hold your hand so much. For whatever reason, maybe I'm sick in the head. I like to feel frustrated constantly until I win, and then I like the glory of that. So that's what the game's trying to capture.
I have to be honest, you've done a good job of that because I have been raging at this game every night for a couple of nights in a row. So
You're welcome. Just, yeah, if it makes you feel better, I'm right there with you as I both play and play test. I'm equally as angry at my own creation. So, yeah.
Okay, so the game is frustrating. That's true. But the more I play, the more I like it. And one thing that I really like about it, and I don't think I ever told you this, but I am really impressed with the basic idea of the game itself because it's a small idea in terms of the minimum scope of a game like this, but the idea can be iterated upon. Like you're already doing that now, so for viewers who never played the game, there are 25 different levels where the only goal is to hit the meteor at the end. But you're about to release a new mode called Routes, where you need to hit a number of collectibles in a particular order before you're able to hit the meteor. That's one way, and also, I'm pretty sure you have plans of extending the game a little bit more where you add different missile types which control differently. Am I right on that?
Yeah, that's correct. So yeah, in terms of your remarks about like the scope and the routes and the small idea and all that, that was very intentional. So prior to this game, I had been working on a game for quite a long time that was much larger in scope. So it's cool to hear that the things that I was trying to be very intentional about came through in the end, which is like, I just want to take a small idea, really tight scope, and sort of iterate on it, right? So I want to make it in a way where I can release it early, get the basic MVP out, get it to a point where I'm happy with it. But I wanted to also be able to consistently release updates to the public because I had been working on this other game for so long, for 8 years in private, and I absolutely loved that game, but it was just so big in scope that I knew that after the fact that I had to get a lot of experience on the other end. And so my thought was, okay, I had a huge scoped game before that nobody saw. Now I need to do the opposite. I need to create a small scoped game that people can see at every point, every 2 weeks, new updates, yada yada yada. So that's just kind of a remark to the scope. And also, like, I always had the intention of releasing early and then sort of building upon it. There's some things that I envisioned I was going to sort of iterate on and create something different for, right? So like you talked a little bit about my missiles and how those would be different. It might be a surprise to some that like how those missiles control later on. It's not going to necessarily be just like a straight like different speed or like faster. It's going to add a little bit more of a twist, which I'm excited to unveil at some point in the future when I do get to that. But in terms of the routes, that was more sort of an evolutionary way of designing it in that like once again, kind of going back to the opposite of what my last game was, that was not released, but maybe in some point in the future it will be. That was very much like a passion project. I worked on it with a really good friend of mine and loved making it. But it was very much a passion project. So we had a very specific vision where with Command Center Earth, it was more like, I'm going to do my best to create a great game. I'm going to do my best to kind of control the scope. But also, it's not my little golden child that I had to create everything. I was much more open to like, what do you as the community want this thing to be? We could potentially speak more to the community aspect later, but Routes kind of came from that, like with this small early community early on and kind of just these kind of brainstorming these ideas and like, oh, that would be a cool way to sort of add some replayability and fun to the game with the collectible sequence. And I really think it adds a lot more fun.
So yeah, I really like this approach where the idea can be executed well in such a small scope that it's realistic and you don't have to pour that much time into it before you do release it. Then you can see what type of feedback it gets. And then if you like it, if people like playing your game as well, you can keep building upon it. I really, really like this method. And that's just something I wanted to point out here. But anyway, going back into how you mentioned that you were working on another game for a long time, around 8 years, before you decided to switch to this kind of mentality of a smaller scope and maybe something like continuous development. Can you speak a little bit more on the genesis of this particular idea and this particular game? So, your philosophy behind the game, which was obviously inspired by your past experience with the larger game. Obviously, you wanted to rein in the scope. So, if you could talk more about any other goals you had in mind when designing the idea, and then also any possible inspirations, like are there any retro games that inspired this? I know you said that retro games inspired the difficulty.
Yeah, so I guess the design philosophy for this game, it's funny because like with this game, I actually, without going too much down the rabbit hole, and when I first kind of crafted this game, my original idea was like, yo, I need to learn more about the other side of games. I need to learn how to market, sell, and release games. I know nothing about that. I only know about, like, I feel like my last project, I learned how to make a game. And I feel so proud about that game. And I love that game. But this game, I was like, okay, I think I don't like to like talk highly of myself or sound egotistical, but I think it's good to acknowledge your strengths and your weaknesses. I think one of my strengths is like I feel confident in my ability to find the fun, if that makes sense. But how to actually market it and sell it, oh man, I know nothing about that. And before this, like with the old game, I had no idea how to make a game. I went to school for games, but I very much learned how to make a game development wise from that game. So to speak to the design philosophy, for me, it's like what I learned also from my last game was, okay, you got to test it. You got to get it into people's hands. And this is also kind of speaks to this releasing to the public thing, is that a lot of indie developers, I think and correct me if I'm like going, or tell me if I'm going down the wrong path here with the question, but I kind of think this potentially goes to the design philosophy. I think what they tend to do is, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the tech side, is like they don't have a stable build. And so what ends up happening is they end up building their game and building, and they never play it because every time they want to play it, the build is broken. And so what happens is you're never getting the feedback from your last build if your game is fun, because you build it, and then you go like, oh, we should probably play it. Oh, the build's broken. Oh, whatever. We'll just keep developing features, right? And so these things kind of go hand in hand of like having this sort of good release pipeline and having a playable build and all that, like, because that iteration loop is very quick. And so you can pick it up, prototype it. Oh, that feels good. The next 2 weeks, I'm going to tweak this and do this. Okay, let's play again. Does that feel good? Okay, cool. And so if you have these very quick, tight turnaround loops of feedback on your own game, it becomes much easier to kind of find that fun aspect. So that's just sort of like, I guess, the development approach of like always have a quick way of, and this is like, I can't emphasize this enough for my sort of development approach or design approach, a quick way to access the latest build in a release state so that you can play your game, and really like see all of its beauty and all of its shit right in front of you in a way, right? You want to see all of its flaws and all of the things that are good, because it kind of helps inform the future state all the time.
Yes, I love what you're saying. I just think it's such a good idea to maybe not even start small, but do a small game. I mean, if it's your first one, that's an extra boon, but you can just learn so much. Like, for example, if you've never posted something on Steam,
yeah,
you can learn how to do that. If you've never marketed a game, you can learn how to do that. And then you're taking minimal risk with that, because since the game is so small, you spent 1 month on it, you spent 3 months on it, something like that, rather than spending 2 years on a game or 1 year, and then you start marketing it and then you find out it's not fun or something like that. And that reminds me of the last game me and my friends were working on. I really resonated with what you just said, because we were working on it for 1 year, basically. We were iterating on it with some of our friends playtesting it, but nearing the end of the development of that game, which we canceled it, by the way, but nearing the end of when we were working on it, we had like 6 levels in the game. And my idea was to have every 6th level have like this unique type of gameplay that's freshening up the game. It's not the same as the previous 5. And we found through playtesting that players love that the most. So that sounds good to try to find the fun that way. But then we started thinking of changing the whole direction of the game. And it was a 3D game, so we're not that experienced with that. It's much more complicated than with 2D. So we ended up canceling it. But we did learn a lot from that project. But what you said about finding the fun, that really resonates with me. And the key to doing that, I think you're right in saying, is that it's playtesting. You need to get something that works out. You need other people's opinions. I think that's really how you make a great game.
Yeah, and I think it's like this push and the pull. Like for me, I guess the way I speaking to design philosophy, I feel very strongly that you got to know when to say yes and you got to know when to say no. If you're trying to make a certain game, sometimes people might want to be like, "Oh, do this," and you have to know when to be like, "That might be a great game, but that's not my game," if that makes sense. But then on the other end, there's also like, "Yo, this could be a cool aspect that people might say," or "Hey, this." Doesn't feel punchy enough. Or like, hey, have you thought of this? Like, that's, I guess, where experience comes in. You got to know what to say yes to. You got to say no, what to say no to. Because your game can't be everything. Because if it's everything, it's nothing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you need feedback, like we were saying, but then you need to filter it yourself, which, like, I think you said it perfectly. That comes with experience. That's not easy to do.
Yeah, it's something I'm grateful for this game for. And that's another thing too. It also depends on the project because my last project, we had a much clearer idea, I think, of what we were shooting for. And it was like, some projects are like filled with passion. And it's like, yo, we're going to make this game. And like you still need feedback because it polishes the edges and it kind of shows you how to make things more fun no matter what. But I don't know how to describe it, but some projects can just feel a little bit different and be easier or harder to sort of know what it is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So,
Oh, you know what? Can I say one?
yeah, continue.
I was just going to say, because you said this and I thought it was really interesting. And the reason I want to say this, because it's something I had to learn and I'm still like learning, is that like just from the game side and from the development side, I think it's the same lesson, is that you want to do your discovery tasks first. The things that you don't know how to do, you want to do all of those things that you don't want to do, you want to do them as quickly as possible. Right? Because I'm sure if people are game developers or game players here, I imagine, right, that are watching this, it's like the fog of war in an RTS game. If you don't know what the hell you're looking at, then at any point you could get surprised, let's say. But like, if you've discovered the whole map, if all that fog of war is gone, then you have a much better idea of what to not do, right? Like, don't go through that chasm. Oh, he's got an army over here. That small game is kind of like that. It takes away the fog of war. So like, it doesn't make you make a hit game, but it does make it much easier because you could see the map. So I don't know. I just thought of that when you were saying that. It's kind of what I've learned.
I never actually thought about it that way myself, a fog of war, but that I really like that analogy because it's like you just said, it gives you clarity. So you need that experience. And like I was saying before, you're getting that experience for very little risk because the main risk in this type of thing, in my opinion, is wasting your time. So when the game is small, it takes less time to make it, less time to iterate on it, etc. So I think that's the perfect trade-off. You make a small game, and like you said, it might not become a hit itself, but that is the key experience you need to have a chance at making a hit or something that's even moderately successful. So I really like that, and it's just true in my experience as well, because the first game me and my friends made, it was actually intended to be extremely, extremely small scope where it was going to take, a month, 2 months, something like that. We ended up working on it for a year. Now that wasn't a year straight, grinding on it every day. We did, real life gets in the way,
Yeah.
etc. But the time frame was like a year, and it really wasn't time wasted because the game was so small. We were able to finish it, even though we had no experience. We were just working together for the first time, and the things we learned from there, like particularly me, the pixel art skill I've learned from there, the game design skill I've learned from there, etc. In the game I'm working on right now, we're building on those skills we already had, and we're doing things we've never done before, so we're developing some new ones. It's very hard to have a successful game. So we do know that as we're working on it, but we still have the passion to continue because we know it's not a waste of time because we know we're already improving in our own skill. So even if this one isn't a quote-unquote success, it still was extremely beneficial for us to do it. So anyway, yeah, I'm 100% on board with that, and I think what you're saying is very wise. You also had to learn your lesson, though. You had an 8-year-long project.
Yes.
But I don't think that probably wasn't time wasted. I mean, some of it probably was, but you must have learned so much from that.
Oh no, yeah. My entire foundation. So like, it's interesting because you were saying, hey, I feel like, this is like a tight scoped game and, expandable. So like all of what this game is, I learned from that game. It hurt to sort of put it on hiatus because I love that game and I loved working with my friend and all that. But I just needed to get experience on the other end, and I feel like this was the other side. But from all of that, I gained so much. Like I said, I can genuinely say, like, when I started building that game, even though I went to school for game making, I didn't know how to make a game. I didn't know how to make a game that could scale. I didn't know how to, right? Because also to release a game iteratively out to the public, it also takes, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here, but you have to structure things in a way where it makes releases easier. All of these things I learned from that game. So I think it's like that in life, right? Like, you very much, even if you don't release a game, even if it goes on hiatus, it's not the game necessarily that is the thing. It's all the things you learn from it. You're almost the product in some ways. The thing I had to learn through all this is like, yo, it could be easy when you don't have like a mega release or things aren't doing well or whatever, to be like, oh man, like what is the outcome of all this stuff? Like, oh, my game I didn't sell, or this or this or this. At the end of the day, it is about the game, but it's also about, like, it's so cliche, but really at the end of the day, like, you can't stand in your own way. Like, all these things are lessons that build to the next thing and the next thing. And it can be so easy to look at all these products, and if they don't do well, to be like, oh man, another failure, but it's not the products. It's like and then you take those lessons and you take that shit to the next thing, and then that thing becomes better. And I don't know. I think that's been my experience. And it's just this year, I've just really been like, oh man, fuck that. I'm not going to get down on myself or look at all the things that weren't done, because all those things that came before are allowing me to do these things that maybe one day or someday people will take notice from, the lessons that you learn.
Just because I'm really curious, let's go back to the second part of my question. Were there any games in particular that inspired this one? So maybe a certain mechanic or the core idea or something like that. Was there any game, maybe it's one of your favorite games, or?
Yeah. So I have one in particular, which might be a surprise. Maybe once I say what it's inspired by, people will kind of see those things. One game that I would always think about when it came to Command Center Earth is Geometry Wars. I loved Geometry Wars. Geometry Wars 2, whatever. I just used to love playing that game with my friend. Back in the days of like the Xbox, I think it was 360, we would constantly be playing the first one for the highest score. And then we'd be sending like images back, like, yo, whatever. And then we would take a picture and then like send it to each other and just be like, fucking, I just beat your score, and just essentially shit talk. I just loved that competitive leaderboard, because as I'm sure with these leaderboard games, like sometimes it can be super hard to beat a time. When somebody beats your time, sometimes you're just like, fuck, like that. I worked so hard for my last time, and then when you see them come in with like 50 more, 100 more, at first you're like, oh, damn, I was top. But then you go back in and then you're like, all right, now you have this like newfound energy to just crush them. I don't know. It just feels good to be number one. And so the leaderboards were always sort of like a day one thing for Command Center Earth. It was always to capture that leaderboard feeling. And actually, fun fact, the game did not release with leaderboards. So going back to this like slow release strategy, they released with like, okay, I'm going to create these tight little levels, and then I'm going to release the leaderboards over time, just because I wanted to get it out to people. But it was always like planned that way. Also in Geometry Wars, there's just like this small little box. It's just, that's the arena, right? And you don't have a whole lot of play. And I kind of loved that about Geometry Wars, because it's like, I don't know, I just always loved like, man, it's like they really scoped this thing down, but there's a lot of fun in that little box that can be had. When you're new to game design, or probably any design, your thought is like, I want to add, I want more features, I want more things, yada, yada, yada. And constraints feel like, oh, I don't want to be constrained. That's not going to make it fun. But then over time, you learned the constraints are actually what make it fun, and they make it easier for you. If you have no constraints, anything can go, and it becomes very hard very quickly. I loved that about Geometry Wars, of just like, yo, they really did a great job like defining their constraints. Like, we have this small box, you can move like this, you can shoot, and that's it. And then we're going to have geometry enemies, right? Obviously pulling that off takes skill, right? But like, I always was inspired by that. I'm gonna constrain myself intentionally. I don't want to create everlasting levels. That was the thing too, that people were like, oh, can the levels be longer or yada? And I was like, no, they can't. Like, for my own sake, they have to be this big, for better or worse. The constraints create the creativity. When you're like, hey kid, you have a cardboard box. then you're like, whoa, you created a little car with this cardboard box. Oh, you created like this ramp with this cardboard box. Oh, but if I was like, hey, you can use duct tape, cardboard, metal, you could use, like anything. It's like all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, like what do I create? Like it can be amazing. It could also be very overwhelming. So yeah, so I would say Geometry Wars for sure was like a big inspiration. And so I love the Matrix. This is just like a small thing, like, but like the UI is all green and this
Oh,
terminal, and I've just always loved that. Maybe it's like the programmer in me. I just love that retro terminal like feel, and the UI was kind of inspired by that. Asteroids is like another inspiration, but I think like, oh, you know what? Moonlander was another one. Even though the game doesn't have that yet, I always loved just the simplicity of Moonlander. It's just like, yo, you just have these simple physics. I think the cool thing about a physics-based game is like physics are like dynamic. You get a lot out of a little when you do a physics-based game. It's just kind of like, oh, you control this thing, and then you're like, oh, the dynamic that's created from these simple mechanics is kind of cool because it allows you kind of to punch above your weight.
I think you're talking about the really old game Lunar Lander.
Lunar Lander, I'm sorry, yes.
So that I was wondering, did that inspire this game? Because another game developer I've spoken to on the channel, I actually did a stream with him, Starlost.
Yeah.
His game is called Lunar Taxi, and the two games that inspired that are Lunar Lander and Space Taxi. So it's such a coincidence that I met both of you guys, and your game and his game is inspired by Lunar Lander. So I was actually curious about that, but I never brought that up to you.
I feel like you can't not love Lunar Lander. It's like there is something about that game that's just so, I don't know, it just feels great. It's like a small little concept, but it just feels so fun to play. You just want to pick it up and play it again and again, and so those are my thoughts on Lunar Lander. It's just like a whole lot of fun.
So anyway, Geometry Wars, I just looked up a picture so I can remind myself what it looks like. I think I've played that like once at my friend's house. Yeah, that really does show how you described your competition with your friends. That really does show in this game, because another excellent thing about Command Center Earth, which is the most fun part about it to me, is that there's not only a basic game to it. Like I kind of think about it like a basic game, and then there's a meta game. So the basic game is you're playing there maybe for the first time. You just want to beat level 1. You want to beat level 2. You might even want to compete against your past self. You want to beat your own time and keep doing that. And that's like self-contained. But then there's a metagame where it's a game between other players that it's an asynchronous type of challenge. So I really like that. And it really makes the game addictive to me, because just what you described, where you work so hard, you've got the top spot now, and then somebody instantly takes it away from you. So I've had that experience repeatedly with Frank. And for those that haven't played Command Center Earth, Frank is just a beast at the game. He's number 1 on almost every single level. And I've recently started taking away the top spot, or at least tying his time on many levels. But I was just playing it before we started talking today, and he's literally taking away a lot of my number 1 spots that I got. So he's taking,
oh, really?
he's the king, bro. He's coming back for his crown.
Oh my God. See, this is the thing as a game developer. I just want to say, like, that brings me so much joy. It's like, holy shit. Like, it's so cheesy, but it really is a dream come true, because it's like, I envisioned this feeling of like competition on leaderboards, right? And then to hear you say that's really cool, because it's like, oh man, that feeling, I love that feeling. And yeah, it's really cool to see, like, you guys fighting for the top spot. And what it makes me want to do is get in there and fucking compete too, honestly.
Yes, please. I would love it if we have more competition. We need more people vying for that top spot.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say this is kind of like, for me, kind of naturally, I guess, segues to the routes. So like the new routes mode, this is part of the reason why I thought routes was so essential, because for those that see the game or play the game or whatever, the base levels, like, ultimately, because they're constrained, logically, the fastest time is always going to be the person that goes diagonally from the Earth to the meteor, right? Like, granted, there's asteroids in the way, so obviously you can't do that, right? And so there's ways to shave off time. But for me, the routes was like this natural upgrade, because once I start putting in these collectibles in sequence, there's a lot more play with how you, or there's a lot more play with how you're able to like grab those collectibles. Which way, like, do you turn here? Did you cut in early? Did you not cut in early? Like, there's so much variance with like the necessity to collect these collectibles. I imagine that the routes leaderboards are going to be almost more competitive because maybe I could be completely wrong, right? Because this happens a lot when you're making a game. Like you imagine it's going to happen one way, and then it doesn't happen at all that way. But yeah, like these routes leaderboards, I think are going to be a lot of fun because there's just going to be so much more room for leaderboard improvement and/or time, and I'm super excited to see that.
Personally, I'm not completely sold on routes, so just for context, I have played through it once for playtesting purposes. Obviously, when we're talking right now, it's not released yet, but it will be released by the time this video comes out. Anyway, as I was saying, I am a little mixed on it. I think the true test is going to be once it's released and we can have interaction in the leaderboard. Then I'll really see if I like it, because that's what really made me fall in love with the base game. The leaderboard competition and competing against my own pastimes. So yeah, I'm mixed on it right now. I am excited for more iteration on this game, particularly more levels or more missiles. But yeah, routes could be really interesting, and the true test of that will be the leaderboard.
Absolutely, and I think that's ultimately what it's going to be like about is like, yeah, the leaderboard aspect, and yeah, I'm curious too. Like I'm curious to see. It's funny because I don't know. I really like it. I think it enhances for me also like the punchiness. But anyways, yeah, not to like elaborate too much, but I actually really I prefer the routes over the standard. But it's really cool to hear that you prefer the standard over the routes, because I've always felt the opposite. Like, oh, the game isn't going to be enough until I get some more replayability in and more, just like a little bit more to do in the level. But I think it's really cool that, so like, because I actually heard from somebody yesterday too that was saying like, they were playtesting routes, and I was, or playtesting the routes build, and I was like, hey, so what do you think of routes? And they were, because they had told me, they'd given me good feedback, like, oh, the game's really great, like I really enjoy it. And I was like, oh, cool, like, so what do you think? What route was your favorite? And they were like, oh no, I just played the base game. And I was like, oh, you just thought the base game was fun. To me, sometimes I feel like it's not enough, but it's really cool to hear that feedback, that people enjoy it just as it is, without even this mode.
So routes, when you're first going to release it, it's only going to have an easy mode. So in other words, each level you can play it normally, and then you could activate routes, which only has one option, easy, and then that just adds these set collectibles. But eventually the idea is to have every level have a standard version, of course, with no collectibles in it. Then you've got easy routes, then you've got hard, and then you've got medium. I think it's going to be fully fleshed out. I probably will like it a lot more when it's got all three difficulty modes of routes in there. But one of the reasons why I'm mixed on routes is because I think there's so much creativity in the standard mode, where there probably will be less creativity with the routes, because you really have to go on a very particular route. But I don't know yet. I still, like I said,
see what you're saying.
I'm mixed on it. So I don't, that's not my definitive opinion on routes. As I said, I've only played through it once, so I will be playing it a lot more once it's released with the leaderboard.
I've had this other thing in my backlog for a while too that I've kind of talked to Frank about. It sounds like it might be a good mode to release potentially in the future. So it's like routes, but you don't have to collect these collectibles in sequence. It's just sort of like, it would just be one mode without any difficulty. Would be like, I don't know, free form, or I don't know what to call it, right? Working title. But there would be these collectibles, let's say, that would be in specific places in the level. You still have to collect them, but you could collect them in any sequence you want, just to add some more replayability, and that would just be one like specific leaderboard. I guess my main goal for this game is I just want people to, when they buy it, they're like, oh, holy shit, there's like so much fun in this little $5 package, right? Like, maybe I don't like this, maybe I like this, maybe I like this. There's a mode for me, and I can play this game the way I want to. That's another thing too, speaking of like the difficulty curve, I don't have like levels locked off. Routes do require you to beat the standard mode, but for the most part, I kind of just unlock everything and let you have at the game. But that was another thing on my mind that I intentionally did, was like the whole new menu system is built around this idea that I can add modes fairly easily to these base levels. I like this idea because, similar to what you're saying about standard, there's so much more freedom in the, like, oh, maybe people are going to at that point create their own routes in these levels, right? They're going to be like, oh, you have to hit this collectible, then this collectible, then this collectible to get the best time. And then later on, Frank might be like, oh, Rame's wrong. Like, it's this collectible first, then this one, which is kind of how the standard mode is, but it just adds a little more, I guess, enhancement to it, which I think would be kind of cool.
Yeah, that sounds like a cool idea. I like how it's routes-esque. It's kind of like a mix. It's like a meeting in between of standard mode and routes mode. So I really like that. I think that has potential for sure.
Just to kind of speak to the game dev piece, like, not to go too far down this route, I've probably said this a million times and no pun intended, but I think also you're always looking for ways to kind of punch above your weight, right? In that, like, when you're creating a game, right? Like, or any product, you want to add value and enhance that thing. But you have to think about, like, how much resources am I going to expend to do this? And so for me, I just thought that's like a natural enhancement because I initially thought, oh, that would just be fun. And it's like, oh, and I already have the assets for the force field. I already have the assets for the collectible. Really, the only thing I'm adding is like some mechanics around how these things are going to be collected.
So I really like that we're talking a lot about the community aspect of the game, like the feedback between player and developer, but then also the interaction of players competing with each other. That's really cool. And I do want to talk more about community. Like, I have specific questions about that. But before we move on from the game itself, maybe you could give your opinion on what are you most proud of in this game? And then what do you think is maybe the worst aspect of the game, in your opinion?
Oh man, yeah, sure. Man, most proud of the game. I what I'm proud of about the game is the tight scope. I've really tried to just kind of keep this tight little pick up and play experience. I always envisioned, okay, I want people to be able to just like pick this up, play, rage, and then like put it away, and I think it's retained that. And I also feel one thing I'm really proud of, I would say too, is like, for those that don't know, games on Android, iOS, and Steam kind of releasing to all these platforms simultaneously in this like pick up and play experience like way, I also feel really proud of, because it's like, not once again to sound cocky, but it's not easy to do. It's taken me a lot of work to get to this point where like I can release and have it be on Android, iOS, and Steam, and it just like works, right? Like as soon as I say that, everything's gonna break. But yeah, so like that's taken me a long time, and I'm really proud of just like how it seems to work, and it's like I'm just proud of that, and I'm also pretty proud of like the UI and the menus. I just like the look of them, and I started off with like having UI designer, then I designed some of them, and so like there's that, and I think that's really cool. I guess the last thing I would say I'm proud about is the game is fully deterministic, and that was a fucking nightmare. I will tell you right now, it was. I'm both proud and also frustrated that I decided to do that, because it allowed certain levels to exist, like Frank and Haxer, and so like on those levels when there's like the meteor stream, I don't know, Raym, if you've noticed, but like it's the same meteors in the same position with the same annoyingly last meteor every time, right? And
Of course.
some people might
That's
not
what makes it
notice
fair.
that. Yeah, exactly. And some people like at first might not notice that. But to me, it matters because that's why the leaderboard is competitive. Otherwise, Frank's playthrough might have given him a more simple like meteor stream than you, right? And then that sucks because it's like, well, that's the only reason you got a better time than me. But pulling that off was a absolute nightmare. I still, every time I release, I run automated tests to make sure that the levels are fully deterministic. And it's just so much has come from that decision. I'm still on the fence about like, I think it was the right call, but man, it definitely increased the complexity of the game or developing it, which I still pay for every time I release. So yeah, I would say that's something I'm proud of, but also kind of like maybe frustrate me. And the thing that I would say that I'm least proud of is, oh my God, my training, dear God, needs to be improved.
Oh, the tutorial.
Yes, the tutorial is painful.
Okay. So first of all, about the deterministic mechanic, I think that was necessary. So I'm really glad you did that. You did that before I discovered you and the game. But in my opinion, the game would be fundamentally broken if this didn't happen because there's a leaderboard. So
yeah, absolutely.
I see you're saying it's a lot of work and you even need to keep maintaining it to this day, which is really interesting. But I think that's a necessary and excellent part of the game. So good job on that. That is something to be proud of.
Thank you.
And then, yeah, the onboarding, I 100% agree with you. it's not good. It's not good. So I really like the game, but I feel like the player kind of needs to meet the game in the middle as it is right now. I don't know how much you could fix at this or intend to fix at this, but yeah, the onboarding, how I think it is now is that there is a player base for this. There's like an audience for this type of game, but there's friction between this game and the players. So only or mainly players that are self-motivated will get as far as like maybe me and Frank, where we really love the game. We compete for the top spot in many levels. And what I mean by self-motivated is that the game will not guide you when it should. So obviously we both don't like when games hold your hand, but holding your hand doesn't mean guidance. It means too much guidance
Hmm.
or condescending guidance. So stuff like that. The game obviously doesn't have that, but it doesn't have enough guidance built into it where players can be tutorialized and really learn the game through the game itself. You need to be self-motivated to experiment. So when I first started playing the game, I didn't understand what certain levels were asking me to do. I was just frustrated. I remember on Boa, I was just so confused. I was like, I don't understand how I'm supposed to move the ship through this. I'm like, I know it's not impossible, but the way I initially got through it, and maybe I'll try to recreate this so I can show it on screen. Well, I might have footage actually. I might have my footage of when I first played through the game. I have to check for that.
That would be amazing. Yes.
Yeah, but the way I first beat the level, I believe, is that I would get to a point where you would have to turn, but I wasn't skilled enough to do that. I didn't understand how to, when to boost, when not to boost. So what I would do is go into this circle with the ship. I would keep doing a circle and then try to slow it down so that once it stopped circling, I was in the direction I wanted. So because that's one way to stop in the game. Like if you keep going in a circle because you keep getting pushed in all directions, you'll stop. So that's what I would do. But yeah, I really did not understand. And I think that is a fault of the game. But once I started experimenting, and I always do this when I play games, I like to experiment, see how does it really work and stuff like that. So that's what I mean by self-motivated. You need to want to stick with the game. And then I think you'll be rewarded because then you'll learn it. Then you'll really like it. But the player has to do a little bit. There's friction there. That's the best way to describe it. I don't know if you've seen that with many other people that have played the game for the first time and then, they're having a hard time at the beginning.
I mean, that is literally why it is the biggest thorn. It hurts me, like any person that's created something, to watch, especially games, to watch somebody play the game and it's like, they never get into the game because the training or the tutorial is so bad. And it is definitely something that I'm going to improve, by the way. So for me, I think of it as levels for the training. There's other things too that I'm like want to improve that I don't love, but the tutorial is kind of the big one that stands out. The main goal of the tutorial when it was built was that I was seeing that there was a drop off and that people they didn't know what the controls were. Primarily, they didn't know there was a boost. Okay, and if you don't know there's a boost in the game, you're pretty much like screwed. It's like almost impossible. So that was the big thing, was like just teach them the controls. I tried to accomplish that, but I just did a terrible job. So that's like fundamental failure of the design, right? Like I was trying to teach them the controls. I don't do a good job teaching them the controls. So that's why it sucks. And the main problem is also it's the first thing that people see. So that's why it's like double sucks. For me, it's like it just hurts in general because it's like you said, it causes a ton of friction for people that want to play the game. And like any onboarding, you want to make things easy on people, not hard on people, right? You want to make it like easy for people to get into something and enjoy the later parts, not like hard. Otherwise, you fundamentally fail. But you got to pick and choose your battles, and especially when you're iterating on something. And so my main battle that I've been fighting right now is just like I want to get more content in the game for people that are already enjoying it. And I think routes is going to be a fun way to do that. After that, I'm going to tackle like making it easier for people to get into the game. And I have a pretty good idea of how to do that. You also gave me a really good idea of how to improve the tutorial, which I have on my backlog, which I love. I think I'll probably do it in steps, and I'm not even sure. Like, I think that's a great idea. You were telling me like teach people how to stop, teach people how to turn, like these advanced maneuvers, which I think is really great.
The thing is, the difficulty curve in the game, I know every level's unlocked already. Like you don't have to go through them linearly, but if you were to play through them linearly, which I think most players will, the difficulty curve is not really that good. I personally found,
Yes.
certain levels to be really, really difficult, but then the next one's easy, etc. But what's weird about it is I think you have the resources in the game. If tweaked, the onboarding could be a lot better. So for example, like I brought up Boa already. Another thing I was thinking about was that could be involved in onboarding, because that's an excellent level that you need to turn on. So I was thinking maybe one way you could do it is that you have something like an achievement. That's another excellent way to motivate players. And this is why I say you have to be self-motivated, because there's no intermediary goals like that. But anyway, if you were to take Boa, for example, and say, okay, this is one of the first levels, beat it. Then the player, to beat it, they have to do something. They might not beat it the way you intended. They might not beat it skillfully. They might just beat it in a brute force type of way where I was just like spinning around and like a centrifuge. Once the player has beaten it, though, they've completed that minor goal, then you say, okay, here's the same thing, Boa, but now beat it in, let's say, a certain amount of seconds. I don't know how many seconds it would be, like maybe 15. In order to do that, the player cannot do this low skill tech where they just brute force the level and eventually do beat it. They have to learn how to turn and drift and whatever. So I think that could be a good example. Maybe you won't do this with Boa, but I think that's a good example where you have a level, maybe you've already made it, and there's a skill you need to beat that level. The player is tasked with beating it. Then they're tasked with, can you do this specific thing in it? Like, can you do it in this amount of time? And then that forces the player to build upon their skill that they already had by beating the level the first time. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's funny because I feel like we're kind of touching on this one subject, another big or maybe not disappointment, but like, yeah, I guess one thing that I'm just like, it hurts still, big one, is so part of this like iterative approach, right? Is that this game started on mobile, Android and iOS. And then when the Steam Deck came out, I was like, you know what? I think this game would be great on the Steam Deck. That was my primary impetus to deploy to Steam too, because I was like, I always wanted to do Steam, but I was on mobile first just because I have experience with mobile. It's a bigger market. I thought it would be a fun pick up and play game, and you know, I didn't want to overscope, right? So I already had experience, yada yada yada. I saw like I said, the Steam Deck. I thought it would be a good market. I moved the game over. Now the main sort of disappointment or con or whatever it is that like when you're building a game in this release way, it can be a lot more challenging than if you're doing sort of waterfall method, in that like you have to think about the fact that the game's already deployed, so people are already playing it, and you don't want to like make, I guess, the people that are playing it upset or like frustrated because of a new update, right? So like kill something. So one big thing that I'm sort of dancing around is that like before I put it on Steam, the big thing with mobile, my main thing was like, I want to make it the controls simple because I hate those on-screen buttons in games. I just like don't love them on mobile games. And so I thought, okay, tap the left side of the screen, go left, tap the right side of the screen, go right, and tap both to boost. The constraint there was that you can't boost while turning, which is like a big thing in the game. So all the levels were designed around that concept. And this is kind of like, what am I trying to say? Like, this is like putting the thing that I probably most want to hide right now out there, but like it is what it is, right? Like this is, and people would know this if they downloaded it, but I'm just like, I know it's not great yet on mobile, but it will get there. So when I moved to Steam, I feel like it was the right call, but on Steam, it felt so awkward to tell people, hey, you can't boost while turning. It just didn't feel like the right move. It felt like the wrong move. So I had to kind of split the audience in some ways, in that like, yo, on Steam, you can boost while turning, but on mobile, you can't right now, although I plan on improving that later. But the problem is that when I did that, like that whole difficulty curve that I had created, or those levels that I had created around this concept that you can't boost while turning, right? Because I tuned everything for that. It kind of caused this disjointed difficulty curve that you're feeling now, right? And now the next kind of piece is like, how do I fix this difficulty curve? Because now if I fix the difficulty curve, I have to maybe potentially reset the leaderboards, or I have to figure out how I'm going to do that in the wild, right? One way I've thought about fixing this is adding more levels in between, right? That like just sort of smooth things out. You could see that it's sort of complicated, but this is the journey, I guess, or the path that I'm on, right? This is what, this is, I guess, just kind of one of the current things that I'm struggling with, or I guess that leads to like a sort of, wart or disappointment about the game, which is like figuring out how to fix this issue.
I'm really amazed that the original game, you couldn't boost while turning. I really never would have thought that. That's an excellent change you made, but I see how that was a constraint of the platform. Like, That's I really never knew that, and I see how that would impact the difficulty curve. Why it feels weird because I always play on computer, so that's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And so it's like, and I remember actually Frank and I discussed this. Like, I have ways that I'm gonna fix it on mobile. So on mobile, I'm gonna allow. I actually couldn't think of a great control scheme on mobile to allow boost while turning, but actually a friend brought one up that I thought was really good, and that's actually probably what I'm gonna do. I'm still on the fence if I'm gonna support like a simple control scheme without boosting and turning, and then an advanced with boosting and turning, or just go full in. But yeah, like, yeah, that's another disappointment. And but that's natural, right? Whenever you're deploying to like multiple platforms, you have to think about the constraints of those platforms, which I think is another thing. And you always have to make some sacrifice, right? Because that's just how it goes when you're trying to be in more places or go on more platforms or whatever it might be. Every platform has strengths and weaknesses, or constraints or not constraints. So it's interesting.
So just out of curiosity, what will the new control scheme be like?
So the new control scheme with boosting and turning is going to be, so you'll be able to select this point, but the top, imagine like there's two sides of the screen still, but on the left side of the screen, that's subdivided too, right? So the top quadrant is going to be turn left, and then the bottom one will be turn right, if that makes sense. And then the whole right side will be boost. But that like halfway point, it's not going to be like halfway of the screen. I'm going to allow you to drag like where feels comfortable for your thumb, if that makes sense. Is it like 20% of the bottom left of your screen is the left, and then 80% is the right, right? Because some phones are much bigger, like
I see.
horizontally. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. That's a good idea.
I think that's going to be it, but I have to play test that. Speaking of like all the play testing, right? Like I'm going to likely release that to play testers and just say like, hey, let me know if this feels good, and like dragging it and all that, and then kind of go from there. But that's my current solve for that issue.
Okay, really fascinating. So we've mentioned many times Frank's name. We've mentioned you have playtesters. Obviously, those people had to find the game in the first place in order to do all that. Can you talk a little bit about the marketing of the game? I'm really curious, maybe how did you start doing it, and then have you expanded it over time?
So, okay. So the marketing thing was like, it's interesting because this was like one of the main things too. Like, I think I've talked about this earlier, but like that I wanted to learn from this game, which is like the other end, right? I keep saying this other side of development, right? Because I feel like a lot of people in the beginning, right? They only see one side because games take so long to make. They only experience like, how do I make a game? How do I make this feature? Okay, yeah, you're learning how to make a game, but you never get any experience about like, how do I tell people about it? Like, how do I sell this game? How do I, get the word out? How do I create a community? How do I, like, there's so much on this other end that's crazy. How do I release updates continuously to people? Like, how do I run tests? Like, these are all things that you learn after you release. So, in terms of the marketing piece, man, I'm by no means an expert, and I am learning still to this day. And honestly, it's funny that we're talking about this right now because I was telling my wife, I feel like this last couple months, it's just now starting to feel like things are clicking in a way of like, oh, this is what you do. There's not a ton of players on Commands on Earth, but I do sort of feel like I'm starting to understand. So the game is actually released a long time ago. The game was released in 2020, and I've slowly released updates and updates and updates and slowly learned and built, these things. But the first thing that I did for marketing was, okay, I'm going to jump on like social media and try to build like a social media following, because I thought like that's, even though I cannot emphasize this enough, did not want to do social media. Not hating on social media or anything. It's just like making games is hard enough. I didn't want to run this whole social media side on top of that. And also, it's funny because I've always wanted to just be the private guy in the shadows, which I'm sure most game developers feel like. I just want to make the games and then just like let them sell themselves. But one thing I had to learn was like, I mean, I've always wanted my company, Breakstep Studios, to be like just that, like just not just me. I want to make games and sell games. And I kind of had to learn early on, like if I want to sell games, if I want to make games, I have to put myself out there for better or worse. I have to not be afraid to be like, hey, I'm Thomas. I make games. Like, this is what I do. You should check my game out. Somebody has to, whether it's you or somebody else, somebody has to be that person. Actually, maybe not. Maybe there's other ways. Maybe you could just release to Steam and the algorithm does its thing. I think that's a potential path, but that wasn't my path. That's not how it worked for me. I think sometimes if you want something to be things, you have to learn to like advocate for it. So I tried that approach. I tried like putting myself on TikTok and like YouTube and all that stuff and kind of creating, like the standard like game development videos, like, hey, this is how you make a game, but also check out my game, and sort of this like hybrid approach. And I don't think it worked particularly well, to be honest. But I also feel like I was never really pushing the game marketing wise all that hard in the beginning, because I felt like it wasn't good enough, if that makes sense. Like I had to get the leaderboards in place. I had to get the friends leaderboards in place. I had to get the friend requests, the friends like system in place. I had to get more levels in place. I had to like get determinism in place. It's been a long time in this journey, but I felt like I was learning along the way a lot of things, right? Like how to release games in public, like how to find channels, like all these things I had to like learn, how to deploy to like Android and iOS, how to deploy to Steam. Like, so I had tried this like social media thing. I had also started to like reach out to people individually, other developers, and ask them like, hey, what are you doing? Can we jump on a call? So there was that. I guess a big one is just like trying things, just like fucking trying things. Allowing yourself to fail in public is very hard and scary, and to put yourself out there. And honestly, Raim, like it's interesting, like talking to you like on Discord is probably not the way I would have talked to people 2 years ago. I was a lot more scared to be myself
Oh, wow.
to people in the beginning. Yeah, I had this like whole like sort of like, oh, I have to be this like dev guy, What you're seeing is probably the product of 5 years of learning, like, you know what? This is fucking Thomas. Take him or leave him. I make games, and it's scary to be that, but I learned like it feels comfortable, and it also seems to be the thing that works because people kind of want to see who you are. You know what I mean? Like, so that was like a big thing I had to learn. It's like, you just got to be yourself to people. It sounds so cliche, and I would have never cussed, in the beginning. There's some things I try to not. I kind of was limiting my cussing earlier because I feel like, if you want to put it on YouTube and stuff too, I don't want you to be like punitized. But I've kind of learned like
I
that's
curse
kind
so
of a part
much
of.
in my streams and everything.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So like, there's that aspect, but like, so like it sounds cliche and it sounds like it's not part of marketing, but it is. It is a part of marketing. Being yourself is a huge part of marketing. People buy not just your game, but they buy your story and they buy you. There's a ton of games out there. There's a ton of things out there. People partially are not just connecting with your game, they're connecting with who you are and your story and your journey. For better or worse, because sometimes it's like maybe you don't want to do that, but it definitely helps, especially in the beginning, build a community, right? And that's also kind of the point of the Discord. I know I'm saying a lot and I'm rambling a lot here, but like,
Oh, let me interrupt you. So I want to touch on one thing you brought up. You said that you reached out to other game developers. You were asking them for their advice. How are they doing marketing? Did they give you good advice that you implemented, or was the key thing you got out of that just communication skills and
both, honestly. Yes, absolutely good advice. And I would say, without a shadow of a doubt, if you are a game developer watching this, hit me up, hit somebody else up. If you see something on Reddit that's like, oh shit, this person did this really well. I'll just give you an example. I'm kind of on the beginning end of starting to reach out to streamers. What Routes has done, I'm going to start like reaching out to streamers and reaching out to potentially press and yada, 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 and being like, hey, I feel like my game's finally at a point where I want people to like play it, right? And this is kind of what I mean by like active marketing versus maybe inactive marketing. You got to approach people and say like, hey, check out my stuff. But the other day there was a guy that was on Reddit and he's like, hey, like I reached out to a bunch of streamers. Nobody responded, but finally somebody did, yada, yada, yada. And I've had like a lot of like, not concern, but like questions around like, oh, what does that email look like that he did, right? Like, is it like a standard template? Like, how do people do that? Do they put their trailer in? When do they send these emails? Is it before they release the update? Is it after? 4 years ago, Thomas would have never done this. I would have just lurked on Reddit. But now I'm like, oh, if I have a question, go to the source. So I hit the guy up on Reddit and I was like, yo, hey man, can you send me your email template? Because like, I'm trying to do that and like, I don't have any idea how to do that. But also, because I try to not just be like, just get and not give. I would told him like, also, I have 5 years of experience releasing my game and I've made a ton of mistakes. If you have any questions for me, like I'm happy to answer them because at the end of the day, this shit's hard enough as it is. Like we got to help each other out. He's like, yo, for sure. Like, here's my email template. I'd be happy to share that with you. And I was like, cool. And like that piece was like, oh, great. I don't have to make that mistake myself. I learned from this guy, so it's like a shortcut.
I honestly never would have thought of something like that. Like if you see something really interesting, like a Reddit post, you ask the guy for his email template. That was a good idea,
Yes.
and that's how you make a new connection. That's really cool. Yeah, like
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I've told you, like when we just speak in private, that it's really cool that we get to talk because I don't know really any game developers in real life, and I only know a few on online. So it's a really good resource to be able to talk to other ones, and or maybe even work with them or something like how we're making this video together. But anyway, is there any specific way that you found other game developers, or was it just like circumstance? Like, for example, you just saw that guy, he made a post and you reached out to him, or any other way you met people, like you went somewhere or something like that?
There's a few ways. So like for all the hate that I kind of give social media and like in that like I just don't really love that aspect. And I think honestly there's probably better ways to play your marketing chips than social media to some degree because it is a huge full-time job. I will say the cool thing about social media is it's a great way to connect with other creators. I hate saying that because it's like this whole cliche term these days. But
Right.
like, like, oh, creators. But like there's people that I on TikTok that I literally was like reached out to. And you might like this story, but like, so there's one guy that I reached out to. He's a really cool guy. We talked on Discord a few times. Graham of Legend. I don't know if the shout out, but he made a really cool game, and I know he's making another one. He's just a cool guy. He helped me a lot, like just kind of give me context of like things I should do, maybe things that I shouldn't do. Like I just kind of literally was just like, bro, can I just ask you a ton of questions? And also like we have kind of a similar family dynamic. It was cool too to connect on that level. Like, how are you doing this? With these things going on in your life. That was cool. Another thing is I hit somebody up. I love to travel. This is like a side note. This could be like a whole other thing, but I'll just say I love to travel for longer periods of time and work abroad. I was in Mexico City for, I think it was two months or a month, sort of work traveling. And I went on TikTok and I was like, yo, Mexico City, any other game developers? And then like somebody hit me up, and then I met with her in person at a bar or whatever. We got a drink. It was me, my wife, and her, and then we proceeded to hang out like 2 or 3 other times in Mexico City and like talk about games. She does pixel art and make that connection. So those are specific ways. One way was like TikTok. Another way, reaching out via DMs in like TikTok. DMs. Oh my God, who am I? Who is this guy? But reaching out, direct messaging somebody in TikTok, doing it through Reddit. Those are like the primary ways. But I guess the fundamental lesson I would say is like, if you see somebody doing something online that you're curious about. So my last game, that's how I found all of the talented people that we worked with. Our menu designer, artist. There was one guy, our menu designer, was super talented. To this day, I don't think we could have ever got him again. Actually, everybody that worked on the last game is super talented. He wrote a post about games on Medium. I hit him up and I was like, yo, you are obviously super talented. Like, could we pay you to work on our menus? He's like, yeah. And then we proceeded to work with him for the next 2 years. Our artist, she used to work for DreamWorks. I was at WeWork, and I used to work at WeWork out of an office. And I remember she had this amazing office. She was that she just like was so talented. I was like, there's no possible way I'm going to be able to work with her. But my buddy and I were looking for an artist, and all the people that we found we didn't really love. And eventually I got up the courage to be like, hey, would you mind like working on our game? Like, we'll pay you. And that worked. So I know this is like probably going off and rambling, but it sounds so cheesy, but it's like kind of like as simple as like hitting people up and just saying, this is who I am. This is what I'm interested in. Like, would you mind helping? And a lot of people will just help.
Oh, that's awesome. Wow. That sounds great. One thing that's not accessible to everybody is you won't be able to hire people. Like for me and my friends, we just work on this. We all, do it together. We would love to have more people working with us, maybe hire them, but we have zero money. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
so anyway, that's really great that you were able to do that. I don't know, do you have any advice on that? I didn't even think we'd be talking about this, but maybe were you saving money before you started game development because you knew you wanted to hire people, or like did you have like an allowance you would give yourself to dedicate to game dev, or how did you deal with the money aspect since you were hiring employees?
That is a great question. And I would say like it wasn't like a ton. So first off, I had a partner, so everything was split in two. So first piece of advice I would say is if you have friends or a team, right, of people that's working on it for free, the first thing is if you want to hire somebody, the cool thing is divide it by the amount of people that are working. If they have, like then that number actually can get quite reasonable. So like, for example, our artist, let's say we would do $500. This is very like realistic budget. Let's just say we would do $500 a month, which is like, that may sound like a lot, but like, what if I said it was like $250, right? For each of us. Then it's like, oh, per month. Okay, that's like not crazy, right? Like insane. Like maybe it sounds to some people, but then if I said, well, what if there's 4 of you on this team, right? Like maybe it's $400, then it's $100 a person. That's like the first thing I would say is like, okay, if you have a team, then maybe you could talk about dividing that up by the amount of team members. Another thing is a lot of the times with these freelancers, you could set a capacities. And this is often the way I work with freelancers. Like, yo, I have 2 hours to give to this for your rate. Do you think that's possible? Let's say, or only work on this for an hour or whatever. So you could kind of set a capacity or a monthly capacity or whatever that might be for certain freelancers, because you have to also realize a lot of people too. I feel like I'm like ranting about this, but I just want to say like there are a lot of people that with differing skill sets that want to work on games, right? So even if you don't have the budget, a lot of times it's just about connections. It's like a lot of times there's an artist that would love to make a game, but they don't have a programmer. And then it's just about a partnership and then like a fair agreement in advance of like, why don't we make a game together? You get 50%, I get 50%, right? The only thing I would say about that is in advance discussing how it's going to work out logistically if you do kind of a partnership, right? Like you definitely in advance need in writing like, yo, you're going to get 20% of net or whatever it may be for doing the art on this game. What does the art entail? This is where the scope kind of comes into play, right? So there are people out there that will do things for the net benefit of having a released game, maybe with not a lot of sales, but maybe it goes into their portfolio. There's a lot of those people, I think. But yeah, sorry. I know I'm hopefully I'm not going off on a super tangent here. Am I?
No, that was excellent. It is kind of true. I've had that in my experience where there are a lot of people willing to not work for you for free, but it's more like be a partner, like you said, like they're part of your team, you work together, and it's either because you want to make money like rev share or it's just a portfolio thing for experience. I don't know. I'm kind of curious about it because you would think, at least my initial impression was, it's really hard to find somebody like that you would align with on your interests, that you align with on maybe your time zone, that you align with on your goals in game development, and etc. So I personally think, because I actually met the key guy I work with on game development, Lao T. I actually met him that way, like that me and my friend, we were looking for a programmer and we found him online, etc. I won't get into the whole story, but long story short, we have been working with him for like 3 years, and he's become our friend.
Yeah.
We not only work together, but play games together. It's just really cool. And I think I always say we're really lucky to have found him. But I'm not sure how much of that there is out there. I don't know. I can't really speak on that. But I think I've been lucky. I think I've been lucky because we found somebody excellent to work with. And I think people should at least try. Like maybe on Reddit they post that they want to make a game. Maybe they're a beginner and they're trying to look for other beginners to start working with. I think that is a viable route.
I was going to say too, just like one small thing about that is that like, if you're going to take that like free approach, just like you would want somebody that's serious, other people want somebody that's serious, right? And the way that you determine if somebody's serious typically is you look if they have skin in the game. So like, what is skin in the game? Like, well, have they released any small projects on their own? Like, like, does that make sense? Like those kind of things, like almost if you would see on like a LinkedIn post or something like that. Like if somebody's like, yo, I'll work for free with you. And I would be like, oh, great. I would probably be like, oh, well, are they serious? Well, how do they know? Oh, they've created these 2 small games. Oh, they have the pick. Oh, that looks really cool. Oh, like, then I might be like, oh, okay, like this person is interested in making a game. They've done it before. They know what happens. And not that you have to, but I'm just kind of saying like, kind of like learning to look at those like those little signs, right? Because it can be really easy also to find a lot of people that maybe like are not super serious, and then they'll do like 2 pieces of art or program some, and then they'll kind of drop off. But if you kind of look at for these like little barriers or things like that, then you have like the same like goals in that like, yo, we need to create like just a small little released game. And that's actually a really good small little thing that I've learned too, is that like, if you're gonna work with somebody, do a 2-week long small task with a well-defined goal beforehand. Like that is if I could give any piece of advice for working with somebody, especially like for free, is do that. For 2 weeks, we're going to do this. We're going to see if we can accomplish this. And if we do, then we'll go forward. If we don't, then move on.
No, that's perfect advice. Like I've said, I've found this excellent guy, Lao T, and we love working with him. And I still work with him to this day. But I've tried to get more people on the team and stuff, but it's like it's so hard to get them to stick, like, or maybe we just don't end up like working with them. But if we do, sometimes we like working with them, but then it doesn't stick. Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. It's strange. It's strange, but once you find somebody that's really good that aligns with you on a lot of those things I mentioned before, then I think you're really lucky. So I think it's something hard to pull off. But there are plenty of people out there that are serious about it, just like you're seriously looking. So there's two sides to it.
I think you got a good point though. Yeah, I actually I completely agree in that, like, don't take for granted the magic that happens
Right.
when you find somebody that you're able to like work well with. Because I think you said it perfectly. While there's a lot of people out there, I believe in, opportunity and abundance and all that. It is still like amazing and magical when you find somebody that you work well with together, that their goals align, and it does take stars to align for that to happen to some degree.
Is there anything else you want to touch on marketing that maybe we went off on a tangent and you didn't get to mention it?
I guess I would just say, like, one thing that really worked that I don't know if I touched on way back when, I forget when it was. I was like, should I create a Discord? I don't know if I should create a Discord, like yada, yada, yada. Another thing to manage. I don't know. And then my wife's main thing is always like, dude, just try it. Just fucking try it. And my wife has like a fairly big social media following. So I definitely defer to her to like the marketing side. She does a much better job on that in regard. And so I really trust her advice. And I was like, okay, she's right. I'm just going to try it. So I created the Discord, and actually it's been like the single best thing I've done. And actually just heard this piece of advice from somebody on Reddit that I just, once again, I just like hit this guy up that was like on this software as a service subreddit. They were talking about ads and marketing or whatever. And I was asking this guy, like, how do you know if you should do ads here or here or here? And he's like, look, the end goal is you do an ad that gets you the closest to the person that is your target audience or that you're trying to sell to. Like, that's where you should be. It doesn't matter the platform, Reddit, Facebook, whatever. And I was like, that's really interesting. That's a good point. That makes like total sense. If you see all the people that are buying your game are the Steam Deck people, what platform, like, work backwards, what platform allows me to most effectively reach those people? To that point, like, the thing that's great about Discord, Frank, you, Volcano Dog, like, I could talk directly with you guys, which is so cool, because if I want to know what are the people that play my game, what would they like, I just talk to you. You have to have the right channel to be able to do that. And it's kind of great that, like, Discord, we talked also about like community, but it's also cool that like I could have a discussion with people that are playing my game, and like, just from the marketing side, that allows you to build a better game and a better product, because you're talking directly to the people that are the people that like your thing. It's like this natural feedback loop. So I would say, like, from the marketing side, the Discord has been really great because it allows me to talk to the people that like my stuff and make it better. And also the people that are probably the most critical because they like it, right? So like, you give me really great pieces of critique because you like it and you know where it fails. So that allows me to make a better product because I could go to that, and hopefully making that better product means more people might like it, right? Reducing friction on the training and things like that.
Let's dig deeper into this. So I like what you're saying, but let's say we're starting from nothing. Maybe you can explain how did the ball get rolling. For example, Frank is an influential character on the game, of course, and you mentioned Volcano Dog, obviously me as well. But like, what is the history behind this? Like, you start from nothing, you made this game, nobody knows about it. How did you get it going? Because once I joined, it already, the ball's already, the snowball's already gaining some size. So like, I don't know if Frank was the first guy that you talked one-on-one with about your game, and like, how did you make personal connections is what I'm asking. And I'm assuming it came from marketing, like people found the game and maybe they reached out to you or something like that.
So yeah, like, two things I would say. So the first thing is, I think with Frank, or I forget if I reached out to Frank directly via TikTok or one of those direct messaging things, right? And then we just like kind of started talking about the game, right? Like, he was like, hey, like, I have advice on this or that or and then I would just ask him questions like, oh, like, did you like this? Did you not like this? And I feel like Frank always like had an interest, and I would just kind of always be like, hey man, like, if you don't mind me bugging you, like, before I would release something, I knew Frank was my target kind of audience because
Hmm.
he messaged me. So I would always kind of hit him up. But to the point of like like the Discord thing, like how do you get the ball rolling? I have very specific advice in that regard in terms of what I think worked. Because I remember being like going half in on Discord. I had it open, but like I didn't really do much. And then I slowly was like, wait a second, I gotta give people a reason to be here. I gotta make this a place even if people aren't here. So like I started being like, I'm gonna post to Discord even if people aren't talking on Discord. There was a point too with my marketing where I was reaching out to people randomly and being like, hey, the people would be like on Reddit, like, oh, I just broke my leg and like got my Steam Deck and like, you know, just like, what games do you guys recommend? And I would just reach out and be like, hey man, saw that you just broke your leg. Like, here's a Steam key for my game. Like, yada, yada, yada.
Holy shit. Is that a real example?
Yeah, that's a real example. Yeah. So I'd be like, hopefully this like, you know, makes your recovery a little bit easier or whatever. Like, so I guess kind of guerrilla marketing in that regard.
Yeah.
I never really thought of it like that, but like,
That's cool.
I was just like, fuck, I just didn't know what I was fucking doing, you know? So I was just like, hey, like, let me just try to get people playing my game by giving them free keys. Because what do I have to fucking lose? You know, like nobody's playing it anyways. What I have to gain is not a sale, but it's like feedback or it's like people telling me about my game. They're not buying my game, but maybe those people will like my game and they'll tell other people. So like if you have nothing to lose, then just fucking give your shit away for free, you know, and people will maybe talk about it. But yeah, so the Discord thing, like
it's interesting.
If you open up a Discord,
it's interesting you mentioned the giveaway free Steam keys because that's actually how I met another game developer. He made a post on Reddit that said something like, "This is probably against the rules of the subreddit, but my game has stopped selling. So if anybody wants a free key to the game, just DM me and I'll give you the game for free." And shout out to the game itself. It's called Adventure of Rika. It's like a classic Legend of Zelda type of game. Anyway, pretty good game. So shout out there. But that was really cool because, you know, I got to play a game for free and I did like the game. And then, you know, maybe I gave him some feedback and I've actually sent him and stayed in contact with him intermittently. And I've sent him a couple of playtests of my own game and got his opinion. So that was actually a pretty cool way to meet a game developer. Now that you mention it, I have actually experienced that myself too.
yeah, and it's like you know, like it's marketing, it's networking, it's like you know, you're just okay. Like I guess the way I see it is, when you make a connection, you create an opportunity. Okay, and this is what I had to learn about marketing. It's about opportunities. Those 400 keys or whatever, those 30 keys might do nothing, but that 31st key might be the guy that creates a YouTube video of you talking about your game that might find 10 people that like your game. And then those 10 people might find, you know, it's just like, it's just opportunity. It might go nowhere. It might go somewhere, but it's opportunity, you know? And it's like, who doesn't like more opportunity? Does it take work? It does. And it's kind of more grassroots. There's a whole nother way to do it. Like, but I would say, I guess the one thing I want to just say about Discord is like, because you don't necessarily have to do it this way, but I kept posting in it without anybody like talking, but eventually you create like, oh, you're talking in there, right? It's like there's noise in here. It's like if you go into a bar and there's nobody saying anything and it's quiet, you want to leave. But if you hear people,
Yes.
or you know, like, or a restaurant, right? Like, you know, or you know, like actually that's a probably even better example. When you walk by a restaurant that nobody's in, you don't really want to go in there. But if you walk by a restaurant and one person's talking or two people are talking, you're like, oh, there's life in there. You know, so like,
Yeah.
you kind of with the Discord thing to the question of like, how do you get it started? I very much think like the way you get it started is you got to talk to yourself for a while. And then people feel like, oh, this guy's been talking to himself for a while. Maybe I'll say something. And then now there's two people talking. And then the third person kind of chimes in. So I just want to give like very real advice on that regard because I felt the same way. Like, what the hell do you do? How do you create a Discord? How do you create a community? That's kind of how I did it. And it seems like it's kind of working. I don't know. Like,
Oh, for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
this video is an example of that. Now that you described it that way, it's a perfect example because I got the game for free. You sent me it. Whatever. That's how we met. And then, you know, we've spoken over time. We're friends now. You've given me advice. I've given you feedback on your own game. And now we're making a video about it because that's beneficial to both of us. So I think that's really cool. And it's kind of like a snowball. So I really like that. So yeah, that's something I was really curious about. And I really wanted to talk about in this, the community. Like, how did it get going? How do you keep it growing? Stuff like that. And you answered that question. That's interesting. And it reminds me in my own Discord, exactly what you said happened. Like it's usually pretty quiet in there because there's not that many people in there. But this one guy that I met actually because he started watching my playthrough of this weird game called Garage Bad Dream Adventure, he was frequently commenting on the videos. So I noticed he was watching them, consecutively. So, and I was saying, you seem pretty cool if you want to join one of the streams I'm doing, like, because sometimes I live stream on my YouTube channel. And then he started joining in there, and then I asked him, you want to be in the Discord server? And then he's actually a very talkative guy, so it's pretty cool because, like you said, once you get like maybe that third person in there talking, then it's like a snowball effect. Because I've noticed that, like sometimes he says something like he's talking about the manga he's reading, or he sends like this his new favorite song or something. Like he's a pretty interactive guy like that, and it just gets people talking. And it's not even a Discord for my own games or anything like that, so it's not really bringing attention to anything or anything like that. But it's just really cool to see. You can kind of reach a critical mass where somebody joins and then they're they're like the kindling, and then it just ignites from there.
Dude, absolutely. And yeah, and it's like, but before the kindling, you gotta kind of be the, like it's like when you're that's a perfect example. Like when you're starting a fire, you gotta blow on that shit like in the beginning, like fucking get,
Yes.
like you gotta get the oxygen into the fire, like it looks like it's doing nothing, but that little fire is fucking building, and then once the fire's kind of there, you start throwing some logs up. But dude, that is such a good analogy. That's kind of how but yeah, before I wasn't blowing on the fire, I was just like, oh, no one's joining my Discord. But it's like, okay, when they get here, there's fucking nothing going on. Like, whose fault is that? That's my fault, One other small random side note is one other thing I've always tried to do is like honor the people that have been like kind of with me in the end. And like, so Haxer was a guy that was very active on the Discord for a while. Frank, obviously. You're gonna come in here too eventually, man. I'm telling you, I'm gonna make a level if it's cool with whatever. But I think that would be another cool way because you've been just giving me so much feedback and it's just been awesome to like meet. But yeah, like small stuff like that. I love that because I feel like it's cool. There's like a lot of little Easter eggs and commands on Earth like that. But yeah, just kind of to give back to the community a little bit, like in whatever way. I don't know if they care, but for me, I think it's cool.
No, it's pretty cool because I was playing the game before I joined the Discord, so I see some kind of level called Haxer, and it's got kind of a cool name. But then I join, and then I see, oh, this guy is called Haxer in here. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a meta Easter egg.
Okay, so I think we spoke about a lot of interesting things here. Over time, me and you, as we've spoken in private, I think we both got stuff out of those conversations, and I think this is a really cool way to hopefully share some of that knowledge, some of those insights, and just interesting stuff with people that we don't know personally, but are interested in game development just like us. So that's why I really wanted to make this video. I'm glad we were able to do it, and I think we went through all the topics I wanted to talk about and more, some I didn't even anticipate. So that was really fun. Do you have anything you want to discuss here at the end?
One like final note is just like I'm still very much figuring it out, like I'm still learning. I don't want to come off like I know it all. I'm just, all I can share with you, with whoever's watching this, is what has worked and what hasn't worked. And there's still a lot more that, I'm also learning. So I by no means have it all figured out, but I do feel like I've learned a lot and I failed a lot in like my career of making a game. Make failure your friend, as they say. Like I've learned a lot of lessons along the way. And so also one more thing about marketing is I think in the beginning when you're learning how to market a game or sell a game, and I'm by no means a marketing expert, is like you think that other developers are your audience. And like so you post to like Unity subreddits or game dev subreddits, indie dev subreddits, yada yada yada. While those places are great for connections and networking and all that, and you never know where that's going to lead, those places are not where those are not necessarily your market. Like you can find, sometimes you'll find like those people, your market is not other developers, right? It's players. So finding where those players are is kind of the difference between selling games and not selling games. Find out where those guys hang out. Like, is it the Steam Deck subreddit? Is it like Android games? Is it Mac games? Is it like, at some expo, some conference? Is it like, go to those places, right? And say like, hey, this is my game. Check this game out. I think it'd be good for you guys, speedrunners or whatever. For some reason, that took me a long time for that to click. And it's just now clicking like, oh, the people I'm trying to sell to are players. but I think we gravitate to game developers because they're like us, right? I don't know, but also for other reasons. Anyways, that's just like a random side note, but it's really made a big difference of how I kind of approached things.
Yeah, it's really interesting. No, I think that's excellent advice.
I just wanted to bring that up before the video ends because I feel like at the end of the day, like if you want to make games for a living, like make a career out of this, you have to sell games. You got to learn how to sell games. You got to learn how to market games. It's kind of what we were talking about earlier, right? Like all these lessons, all these failures are like, you're kind of the product of all these things. And so one thing I've learned is like, oh, I have to go to where my players are so that I can sell games so I can continue making games. And my players are not these indie dev subreddits or whatever per se. They're in other places. And I have to make a concerted effort to be there so that the people that will like my game will see my game so that I can sell games, so that I can keep making more games. Yada, yada, yada.
No, that's awesome. I think a lot of things that you spoke about here are really helpful. They really give me at least a lot of insight. When we talk, like I feel like, oh my gosh, I'm like a baby developer compared to this guy. But everybody's always learning constantly, of course. But no, definitely, I think you've done an excellent achievement with this game. And yeah, I'm inspired by that. It's really cool that we're able to work together on something. Like there's a collaborative aspect to your game because we speak about it and I play test it and stuff. But then also, we're doing this video together. So really cool. And with that, we'll end this conversation here. I'll leave, of course, the link to the Steam page of Command Center Earth in the description, as well as the link to the Discord server. Is there anything else you want to maybe promote or leave a link to or anything?
Mostly just to say thank you. Like, just sounds so cliche again, but like really, man, like any game developer, right? Like the what I get the most joy out of is people playing my game. Sounds so cheesy, but like really. So I feel like it's been so cool to see you play the game and also just thank you for like, taking the time to like talk to me about it and all the feedback and all that. I guess my last bit would just be, check out my game, Command Center Earth. If you like it, reviews are always helpful. And jump on the Discord if you guys want to have some conversations and if you want Rame to slay your score on the leaderboards or Frank.
Yes, and please rise up. Please rise up and slay our scores yourselves. Please, we need more competition here. It's only me and Frank really pushing for those top spots. And it is so cool. Like, I finally beat him. And then I'm like, okay, he can't beat this. And then he beats it. So there's like an untapped potential to the levels. So I feel like if more people that play it, that's why I want more competition too. I mean, there's stuff that me and Frank maybe think is impossible to improve, but it is possible. So yeah, guys, I highly encourage you to join the Discord server and play the game. It's really fun. And by the way, I made on speedrun.com a page for Command Center Earth, and I'm the only guy there. I'm number one in the world. I'm the fastest speedrunner of Command Center Earth. So please beat that so that gets the ball rolling, and maybe Frank or me or Thomas will lower the time even further. So yeah, check that out. I'll leave the link to that in the description as well.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome. I had a blast talking. Thank you for everybody listening to me ramble.
Yes, thank you everybody for watching. If you have any comments or questions for Thomas, leave them in the comment section. Let me know what you thought of this. Do you want to see more game developer interviews? Thanks again, and I will see you in the next video.